Hey, it's Rocky. We've created a special 3-part series about how to buy, grow, and sell your business. I'm joined by some of my good friends and other business experts. Check out all the 3 different episodes.
Welcome, everyone. We have a very exciting show for you today. We are going to cover the 3 phases of entrepreneurship. My name is Giuseppe Grammatica, host of the Franchise Freedom Podcast, and I wanted to introduce our guests and my good friends.
Thanks, Rocky. Glad to be here. This is Henry Lopez, and I'm the host of the How a Business podcast and an entrepreneur.
Hey, I'm David Barnett, and I've been talking about buying and selling small and medium-sized businesses now for over 11 years on YouTube. I've got a bunch of books that I've written, and I work with people every day, helping them to analyze deals and hopefully avoiding mistakes.
I'm Rocky Lalavani, host of the Profit Answer Man podcast. We work with 7- and 8-figure business owners, helping them to scale and grow their profit and cash flow.
Thanks for joining us today. We're going to kick it off today with phase number 2 of the entrepreneurial journey. We talked about finding a business on the last episode, and today we're going to talk about cash flow management, coaching, and strategy. So for this one, Rocky, did you want to kick off things with kind of maybe talking about profit first? We found the right business, the business is up and running. I learned a lot from you over the years with profit first and being able to budget. In all these years, like you asked me, what's my marketing budget? And I just pulled a number out of my pocket. Talk about profit first and cash flow management. I think that's a super important topic.
So Profit First is a book by Mike Michalowicz, and he's a serial entrepreneur. He wrote the book because he essentially went bankrupt, even after having multiple 7-figure businesses, right? So that is not outside the ordinary. It is really nothing more than a cash flow management system. So when you bought the business, you said you were going to make money. Well, great. Show me the money, right? That's the line. And so what Profit First does is whenever you get money, it goes into the income account. So that's all the money coming in. So if you remembered last episode, we said, hey, show us that the revenue is real. It's the same concept. Here is the real revenue. Every day, month, whatever, the money comes in this bank account. And then once you get the money on a regular basis, you send it to do what you said you were going to do. So first off, you're supposed to be profitable. So we set aside our profit first, kind of like pay yourself first, kind of like the 401k maybe that you had at work. The money comes off the top. This is my profit. It goes in the profit account. Just because it goes in the account doesn't mean you do anything. It just sits there. The next account is to make sure you, the owner, gets paid, because that's what you all wanted. I wanted to get paid. So let's put your pay in the owner's pay account. Of course, the government's going to come for its taxes. So let's be prepared for that. Let's put our taxes aside. And then the last thing is, hey, this is the money that I have left. And I got to figure out how to run my business on what's left, my operating account. And the thing that happens a lot of times is they do this, and then after a month or two, they're like, I'm out of money in my operating account. So they start stealing from their other accounts. At least you now know that there's a problem months ahead of running out of cash, because at least you have some of those reserves there. And it tells you that something is wrong in the business, something is wrong with your model. Go figure out what the problem is. And that's the downfall of Profit First. It doesn't tell you what the problem is. It just sets off the alarm bell that you ran out of money to run your business. Figure out why.
But Rocky, people that are trying to manage their business by looking at their bank account alone usually find out 45 days after the alarm bell should have gone off that they have a problem, and that so just having an alarm bell go off is a huge advantage in running a business.
Well, correct. It's like the little thing on your gas tank. It says you're going to run out of gas soon, so go fill up, right? It's just an early warning. And like you said, most business owners aren't looking at their financials. They're looking at their bank balance. And so you're getting an early warning that you spent your pay, you spent your profit, and you spent the tax money.
Yeah, this is such great stuff. This is a leading indicator, an early warning type approach, right? Which business owners usually don't have. Even when we look at our P&L, it's a lagging indicator. So that's what I love about it. But I'm glad you spoke to the key thing, though, that I see, Rocky, that people struggle with Profit First, is, as with a lot of things, they look at it at like when Ferris put out the 4-hour work week, and people thought, oh, you just work 4 hours. No, 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 you're missing the point. People think that, oh, this is how I'm going to make money, even if the business model is broken, that there won't be enough to leave in the profit. But to your point, if you use it, at least it'll tell you there's a problem, something's broken in the business model. So I love that part of it.
Yeah, and to keep you
Now,
accountable. You want to go ahead, Dave?
well, in Profit First, Rocky, like, I mean, you talk about the vanity metrics versus earnings, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one of the traps that I see business owners fall into is, they get an opportunity to make a sale. It's maybe a high dollar value. They're excited about being able to receive that check one day, but maybe they're not making the margin on it that they should, right? And so the Profit First idea, do you find that it causes people to pause and really examine these transactions more carefully to make sure it makes sense for them? Or is the discipline learned afterwards as the accounts shuffle out?
It depends. It depends on the person, right? Some people, they just steal and they go, this system is broken. It doesn't work for my business. And we're like, no, no, no. Your business doesn't work. It just told you that, right? That's just the reality of it. Um, I think that's the hard transition. I think that the real struggle is most business owners, they know how to do their business. At least over time, they figure out how to do their business. If you're in the restaurant business, you know how to cook. Maybe if you're in the trades, you know how to put the roof on. Most business owners don't understand how to do the finance part. They don't know how to wear the finance hat. And I think the problem is they ask all the wrong people. The bookkeeper is like, yeah, I put this and I in the block where I'm supposed to put it. I did that. They're not telling you how to grow the business.
Yeah.
Your CPA is a tax person. They're like, yeah, I followed all the IRS codes. You made or you didn't make money and you owe taxes. How do I grow my business? Spend less. Like, that's everyone's answer. Spend less. And that's not maybe it is the answer, but it's not really the answer. It could be pricing. It could be how the cash comes in. Like, David, you talked about, I made the sale. Did you get the check? We don't celebrate till we get the cash, right? How quickly is that coming in? So it's all of these other things that are part of the business and understanding how the cash flows that I think are more important.
And I will say on Profit First, about it working or not, I think it works great, but sometimes the percentages, the buckets are just, the numbers are off. You're trying to maybe squeeze too much out or not put aside enough for taxes or for R&D or for marketing or whatever the case may be. So sometimes I believe there needs to be adjustments. And I'm not saying to consistently take away from personal income, but at some point you don't want to be that person bringing in $1 million in revenue and then growing it to 5 million, but still taking out the same amount of income. So I see that trap very, very often, where you're growing the business revenue wise, but not making a dollar more. So I think those need to be revisited. For me, Profit First has been a game changer, because when you get everything that, all that money falls in the account and you have all this extra income, or this extra cash, I should say, it's like, well, did you pay your estimates? A friend of mine who owns a very successful business says he's always short on paying sales tax. And I said, well, how the hell can you be short paying sales tax? That was money that you took on top of every sale, and it's supposed to, pay New Jersey sales tax. And he's like, well, there's nothing left in the account, and that really needs to be separated. Should be commingled, with the rest of the money. So I hear that all the time, and we have the same conversation, and doesn't seem to be fixed. But I would throw in a monthly. When I started my business, my accountant, for whatever reason, could not figure out how to do a monthly P&L. I almost had to wait until Q3 going into 4 to kind of do a true up, see where we're at. And I go, why can't we do a monthly profit and loss? I don't know kind of where I stand. And looking back, that was really silly, and I probably should have replaced my accountant then. But looking back, it's like, how can you not have a monthly P&L? Why wait until the end of the year when the damage may have been already done? So
Well, and you know, I always used to tell people by the third or fourth of the month with these online banking services we have now, you know, by the third or fourth of the month, you should be able to reconcile the month. But
Right.
I've changed my opinion on this
Mm.
because at the beginning of this year, I moved over to Zero cloud-based accounting, and
Mm.
it's connected directly to every account that I have, credit
Mhm.
card, PayPal, all of it. And every morning I literally go and I check. Sometimes I have to make a couple of reconciliations, but in real time, every day, I know exactly
Yeah.
where I stand from profit to balance sheet, everything. And so data is absolutely available if people are going to take the time to learn how to use it and learn what it means as far as what's happening in their business.
But
I'd
I
like
think
to go ahead.
I think they need to present the data in a way that makes sense to you
Mhm.
and in a timely. So I've seen business owners, even business owners that are north of 10 million, they get a monthly P&L, but it's just that month.
Mm.
And maybe it compares it to the same month last year, but there's no month to month to month
Yeah.
that you can
Mm.
see the trends, see
Right.
the things, and they get it on paper. Like, what am I supposed to do with a piece of paper? Like, I can't do calculations if it doesn't have like percentages and all of that kind of stuff. You don't have manipulable data. That's not helpful. And I think the problem is most people don't demand, hey, I need it this way. It has to be in Excel and I want this format. And you need to go in and fix the chart of accounts so that things are organized properly for me to make a business decision.
Great point. Here's a question I want to throw out for a quick conversation that I think fits best here, Giuseppe, in the agenda, and that's the mindset around debt. So we touched a little bit already about that some people come to business ownership with really bad personal financial habits. They're overspending, the typical story there. And then I find that translates into the way they're going to financially manage the business. But then I have a lot of clients that are on the other side of that. They've been brought up, understandably, to think that in personal life, debt, especially consumer debt, is bad. But then they fail to understand the value of leverage at the right level. David talks a lot about this as it relates to the debt you're going to incur to buy a business. But I would love to get three of you, but maybe we can start with Rocky. How you help people make that shift on mindset that there is such a thing as good debt in business.
So I think you have to define what the debt is being used for. Especially during COVID, the government was handing out lots of money. And people were using debt for daily operations, right? They were paying their employees or doing things.
That's what they were told it was for.
That's right. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you can't borrow $1 million for daily operations that you now have to pay back for the next 20.
We were
Because it
hoping,
didn't-
and we did for the PPL that got forgive. That was the part we were counting on, right? But the EIDL loans did not get forgiven.
Correct.
So, yeah.
But even if what happens though is if business owner is struggling, they've got a cash flow problem, they go borrow money and then they use it for daily operations, not to improve their business, not to make more profit, not to fund a particular deal. What I mean by that is, let's say you've got a situation which is a longer term type of sale delivery. So they give you the order today, you have to buy all the materials, you have to deliver it, and then they pay you 30, 60, 90 days later. Funding that is okay.
Mhm.
Of course, you should also include the cost of funding in your proposal. You
Right.
don't put that as a line item, but you make sure there's enough profit to cover it. And that is workable. I'm doing this to get this deal to make this money versus just spending money and hoping that somehow it's going to come back to you.
So borrowing for growth or investment, avoid borrowing to cover for a broken business model.
Correct.
David.
Henry, I have seen so many people get a line of credit from their bank.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, this is great. I can finance receivables. I can finance inventory. But what really starts to happen is they'll lose money one month.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of that alarm bell going off that Rocky mentioned earlier and them saying, well, how do I fix my business? Well, they don't need to because they've been able to finance the loss with the line of credit.
Right.
And then they can drag their heels a bit. There's a story I love to tell about a client that I worked with several years ago. These were some guys doing like those nice epoxy flooring that epoxy floor finishing that we see in garages and factories and places with concrete floors. And they wanted to buy this expensive machine that would like grind the floor material, like grind the concrete or whatever. And I told them not to. I said, you can rent that thing. You should rent that thing. And when you develop enough pipeline of business that you are busy 15, 16 days a month and you need that machine, then the economics will change. They came to me a few months afterwards and they say, we are now spending like $1,500 a month on renting this machine. But if we bought it and paid a loan, we'd be paying half that amount. Well, that's the time to do it.
That's the time.
And so if you treat it in that way, you're always winning. And if something happened to the business, well, the plan B, I guess, is that you sell the machine and maybe you recoup some of that investment and you can probably pay off the loan. But you've invested in making the cash flow of your business better
Great thoughts.
when
Giuseppe, what are
you
your
acquire
thoughts?
the debt.
Yeah.
No, I love that to me. And there's so many other tax advantages, and we can talk about that Section 179 bonus depreciation that you could take, but keeping in mind that's end of the year, you got to wait to file. But absolutely, I'm all for debt. It's what I normally recommend, but also you have to be that person that is dedicated to paying back that debt. Someone asked, "Do you believe in credit cards?" I said, "Absolutely. I never use a debit card." But I told a family member I would not recommend a credit card for you because you are disorganized, you pay late. So I really think it depends on. It's a silly example, but it is true because they were always late and they forgot to make their payments. I said stick to a debit card, just use whatever's in the in the bank account. But I'm all about leverage. As long as you're keeping track and making those payments and automating things, 100% for it. All right, so let's talk about a second topic. This is a topic I talk a lot about, and it's about the business is up and running, and it's along the lines of strategic connections and relationship building. A lot of people I work with said I am not a salesperson, and I always say as a business owner, technically you're always selling the business, and there's different layers here and different levels is the way I explain it. We're not cold calling necessarily, but it's relationship building. And the place that I recommend to everyone, and this is something I did myself, was joining the Chamber of Commerce. That being kind of the place where you're in the same neighborhood, you're speaking with other small business owners in your market, depending on what your business is, and just building that network. I jokingly call it the mayor of the town, right? Getting to know everyone. People like to do business with locals, right? If you're in the same area and then you have a restoration business, you may network with a local plumbing business, a local insurance business, or even a local contractor. So the importance of relationship building is big. It's how we all met, either through podcasts and through introductions over the years. So we'll go with Henry if you want to take over. But the importance of relationship building. What do you recommend to individuals as far as where to start, and just the not the position, the place it kind of fills in the business as far as having all those relationships?
Right. And I'll come from the perspective of a location specific business, not an online business, right? So the typical business, either in the services or retail, whether you have brick and mortar or not, where you're depending on those people that live in that geographic area to consume your product or service. First and foremost, I would say, and I'm advising this, like, for example, I'm working with my daughter now and building her business. And I suffer from this as well, but younger people in particular, I'm generalizing. The key thing I always tell them, and this isn't my adage, but the business is out there, not in here. In other words, we got to get out there, to your point, Giuseppe, into the community and connect with people. Now, what's most effective? Certainly, Chamber of Commerces are still effective, but I see them as dying because their original purpose is all of that I can get myself online now. So often it depends on the Chamber of Commerce, and I've been a member of lots of them. Sometimes it's, the 5 realtors and the 6 life insurance agents, and so you don't get much out of it. But it's good.
Good point.
The question you have to ask yourself is, who is my target audience? Who is it that I'm trying to reach that buys my product and service? Where do they gather? How can I get in front of them in those physical places or spaces or gathering places. And then beyond that, who are the influencers on my ideal client? I'll give you an example. I have a client that I'm working with. She built a life wellness studio, physical location. People come in and get certain treatments like red light therapy and cold plunge. Well, she's got the direct consumer, right, that comes in and she knows who that demographic is. But also a big source for her is referrers, massage therapists, chiropractors, other practitioners that would refer clients to her. So she needs to get out there and work that network of people. And so that's part of getting out in the community is I may have to go visit them individually at their places of business, or I get in front of where they gather. And so those are my philosophies on what's most effective from a networking perspective.
Yeah, I think those are great points, and I'll build upon what Henry said. I think that you need to be very intentional about the idea of networking and having connections, and not just making the connections, but nurturing them and keeping in touch with people. And whether you are talking about a local business and local people in the area that you want to be connected to. I think what Henry mentioned there about people who have an influence over your potential customers is really important. Centers of influence is what I call them. And, I actually keep a list in my workflow management software of people that I think it's important for me to have a relationship with. And one of the things I look for when I reach out and meet someone to add them to my network is I kind of ask myself, like, do I think that this is the kind of person who could be a friend of mine? Because I'll tell you, it's a heck of a lot easier to keep in touch with one of your friends than it is with somebody that you don't think is your friend, but you're trying to have FaceTime and conversations or send emails with because you feel some obligation to have some kind of connection to the person. And, it was funny at Christmas time, I had a lot of phone calls of people who just wanted to touch base and catch up and, say, hey, how's the family and things like that. And if you can intentionally find people that, are going to help with business and you can help them with business and they can become friends of yours, that's, I think that's worthwhile. And that's something that you really need to focus on, and it will pay dividends. Here's the key: whether in the long term your business is successful or not. Because if you ever run into trouble in your business and you ever have a bad time, that's when you need friends. And you need to be able to reach out and talk to people and ask for help, ask for advice, ask for ideas, and or even if things don't work out and you're looking at the next thing, friends again are going to be what helps you. So I think networking and communications and keeping track, just so that you don't forget somebody and you have meaningful outreach and conversations with people on a regular basis.
But I think you also need a good team around you. So looking at, some people have a business coach. Some people might be part of a mastermind. You've got your accountant. You've got an attorney. The funny thing, though, about a lot of these is most of them may not understand your business, and most of them may not understand how money flows in the business. I always make the joke with attorneys, they went to law school because there's no math class. So don't ask for math advice, But what I find is our client will hand the attorney and say, create this contract for me. And we'll have worked on the financials ahead of time for how the contract's to be written. I'm like, send me the contract when it's done. I get the contract back. It doesn't say anything in alignment with what they told me. Or if they're going to buy something or get involved in something, the same thing. Oh, this is a great deal. This is what the opportunity is. I go, send me the contract. I go, the contract doesn't say that. It says something totally different. And you'd be shocked at how far apart these things are. Your CPA, everyone goes, oh, my CPA is going to help me with my finances. You know what CPAs get yelled at for? A big tax surprise. Do you know the biggest way to get rid of a big tax surprise? Call you up in December. Spend money. Hey, why don't you go spend money and buy a truck in December so we can get you a tax deduction, because I forgot to make sure you paid enough in taxes. And so, granted, you get the deduction, and then you're sitting there in March and you have no cash. And so understand the motivations. Most business coaches don't look at P&Ls. They don't understand them, or business owners don't share them. And so they're like, let's grow the business. And we're like, that's great. You just grew a business where you lose money on every single sale, and now you supercharged it. Way to go. Like, that is not going to work. So the other thing is, all these people got to talk together, and somebody's got to play quarterback to make sure they're all on the same page, because each of them has their own tool, and everything they do, they use that tool for. The question is that the tool for your business?
I love that. And it took me years to find, my financial advisor referred me to my attorney, who referred me to my CPA. A lot of these decisions, you have to look at all angles. The CPA is looking at the accounting angle, but what about if that exposes me on the legal side? So there are three women that work in the same town as myself. They all go out once a month, and they all kind of sit down and they do kind of a brainstorming session of all their clients, how they can help them differently, but looking at all different angles. That is huge, and that is not easy to do. So I started with my financial advisor, and I said, who do you work closely with? Who do you actually hang out with? Like, to David's point, who are you friends with? Who would you mind having a drink with? And that's how I built the team. But it took me a lot of tries, because the accountant always said they talk with the attorney, yet they would never pick up the phone or send some vague email. So there's a lot of moving parts, and you need to look at it holistically. You got to look at all different angles and make sure those professionals have the entire picture, and that they're all talking together. So that is equally as important as finding that right person is the team. So great point.
Back when I was married, my ex-wife and I bought a business, and the other party's attorney had done all the closing adjustments and made all kinds of math errors, but they were in my wife's favor, so we didn't feel the need to raise our hand.
Yeah,
just to your point about attorneys and math.
Attorney, yeah, it's that's gonna be part 4 of the episode. So
yeah.
That's going to be
exit through divorce.
Yeah. We'll just go off the rails on episode 4. That'll be actually a good topic. All right. Finally, one thing that comes up a lot is, how do you future-proof the business via technology? Conversations nowadays, everything is around AI. Will AI affect my business? And the answer is, for the most part, yes. And that's not a bad thing. What is AI? What is AI's role going to be? And sometimes the role is you taking advantage of the AI. We talked about having a CRM. I think David had mentioned that, and keeping dibs and track of people, helping with research, but also people are doing business differently. People are spending a lot more time on Chat GPT. I just started trying out Claude and doing their franchise reviews. Avoiding an attorney and actually having Claude or ChatGPT do the review. So I think technology has always played a big role, but I do not believe it will ever, especially in what we offer, take away from that one-to-one relationship. I think that's where we kind of differentiate ourselves. I think we're going to be able to use AI, and each industry will be affected, obviously more than others. But wanted to get your take on technology and future-proofing your business, because you may have a solid business now, but you got to really keep up with the time. So we'll start with David. Wanted to get your thoughts on technology and what that looks like.
Yeah, I think AIs are machines. And so machines are really, really good at certain things, like processing data and understanding, chunking through huge amounts of text or looking for something or other. And I think if you figure out what can really be well addressed by a machine in your business and then apply that tool to that problem, I think you'll get ahead. And that's going to free us up to double down on being human and doing the things that we are the only ones that are going to be able to do. I know that I saw this interesting graph, and it was talking about different countries in the world and which ones where people had the most confidence in what AI output, basically was telling them. And it was basically a complete inverse relationship between education and confidence in AI. Because I don't know about you guys, but when I ask questions, if I open up an incognito browser or something and I ask an AI a question about my area of specialty, it often gives pretty poor advice. And so understanding how they work, understanding how to build tools with them, and understanding what content or creations we have that need to be fed into it to make it better, I think are going to be really important. And I'm excited. We're right now going through some of our older programs that are in need of a bit of an update. And one of the updates we're doing is we're creating AI tools to help the students learn the content. And one of the things I do is in one of my cash flow programs, there's a chapter on sales forecasting, where I teach different kinds of businesses and how you forecast sales differently for each one. And I'm right now working on a AI sales forecast coach, where people can create an Excel spreadsheet with their idea of a sales forecast and basically critiques people, asks some tough questions. It just goes through this system that I taught people, verbally through a lecture. But it applies that methodology to coaching or advising someone. I think things like that are really cool. Ultimately, though, if someone's going to go borrow $1 million and open up a business and they're going to rely on that cash flow, I would hope that they invest in getting a real person who's a real expert to then review all of that stuff and really make sure that it makes sense. Because I know AIs are always trying to pander to me, man. They're always trying to tell me how great I am. And it feels good for a bit, but then you're like, like, is this because you're not as smart as you think? Like, I don't know.
That's because you're great, David. It's telling the truth, right? It hallucinates sometimes too.
Yeah.
I think from a business standpoint, it's understanding the cost of technology. So even if you look at accounting, it used to be you could go buy QuickBooks and you'd buy the software, cost you $200, and you'd use it for years. And if you had multiple businesses, you could, run multiple businesses on that one copy. Today, it's not unusual to spend over $100 or a lot more, depending on the size of your business, on using QuickBooks.
Yeah.
And same thing, it used to be cheap to advertise on Google and you could buy leads. Today it's expensive to do that. Or if you're on a platform and you let it own you. So like building a business on Facebook or Instagram, if that's your sole way of getting business, if you get banned from there, that's a problem. Same way you can get banned from Amazon, and that's a problem. All your stuff gets locked up. But even other software that a lot of business owners use, I have seen inflation in software is absolutely ridiculous. Costs are just skyrocketing, and I think it's going to get a lot worse before it gets any better. And the other thing is, does the software actually improve your business, or what are the downsides of using that particular piece of software? Because trying to move off of something, people are like, once they get entrenched, it becomes very hard to move your business off of a piece of software. And so you really have to take the time to say what's going to work for me. Right now, AI is cheap, but ChatGPT is losing money like crazy every day. They actually just canceled their image program, Sora, which was losing $1 million a day. So don't be surprised if AI costs $2,000 a month at some point in the future. Because so figure out how to build your business without being stuck on everybody else's platform.
However, of course, great point. And I see that myself, Rocky, with clients. When I look at that line item on their P&L, it's like, wow, your technology costs have increased. However, it's still, relatively speaking, so much more democratized, so much more accessible to us as small business owners. We now have access to essentially the same level of computing that larger organizations have, that have previously been beyond our ability to leverage. And so, having come from spending the 90s selling ERP systems, complex software systems to large organizations, back then, the whole thing was consolidate on one massive platform like SAP. And there were huge implementations. But with technology, and one of the benefits of AI that has resulted now, is we can go best in class and then use AI or AI-enabled technologies like Zapier to tie these systems together. And that's an incredible opportunity that we have as small business owners. We don't have to implement Salesforce, for example. We can implement best in class and then tie those together pretty magically with AI, even if it's through a tool like Zapier. But as far as AI goes, I'm all in. I don't spend much time, if any, thinking about the negatives, not because I don't think there are negatives, but I choose to instead, to me, it's like the high speed train, Japanese bullet train, and I'm hanging on the outside, kind of Mission Impossible style, trying to hang on. I think as a business owner, either you embrace it and adopt it best you can, as we've all touched on here, or you will get left behind. The competition will leverage it against you. One of the best ways I think I've heard it put here recently was what it does for me anyway is it gets more out of the time that I have. It accelerates things. It accelerates my thinking. Couple of quick examples. My son-in-law, who's become quite tech savvy, and his company where he's working now, he still has a job, but we're going to work on that. He's become the AI guru there. But he helped me build a little app that we just developed. It's HTML code, but it was all, he's not a coder. It was all created by Claude or ChatGPT. It doesn't matter. And it's a little module now that my clients could go online. I just released it yesterday and answer 16 questions, and it gives you a score on the health of your business model, what we've been talking about. Well, that's a tool that I would have before had to have hired a developer or maybe used an off-the-shelf kind of application. He coded that literally in an hour. The work was in designing what was it going to do, how would it flow, what are the kind of the pillars of a solid business model. But he cranked that code out in an hour. Yeah. So it accelerated there. I had a conversation this morning with a client who just identified they have to replace a position in their company. I won't give too away for confidentiality, but that position, one of the headaches now for him is it takes 2 months to ramp somebody up for that position. And part of what takes the longest is product knowledge. So as we were walking through reinventing, how do we reduce that onboarding time frame? AI could help, because AI could be something that that person in that position goes to ask a question. Basically, essentially, what takes the longest for that person to learn is a customer comes and says, I have this problem. Oh, here's a option from a tools or equipment perspective to help you fix that problem. And I don't have this one, but here's an alternative. So making that decision, easy application for AI to apply. So got to adopt technology. We have to stay ahead of it. We cannot bury our head in the sand, not unlike so many business owners did with the website, right? There's still a large portion of business owners that don't even have a website. Now, maybe it doesn't matter as much anymore if you don't do e-commerce. It's all going to the Google business listing. You've got to adopt technology and leverage it in your business.
Love that. Yeah.
Boy, that felt good to get that out. I don't know if you could tell.
That's it. You do have to adopt it, and maybe on another show we could start sharing some different tools that we're using. But I've been trying a few, and still trying to get everything to kind of talk and work with one another. So now this is great, and this wraps up our second show, our second installment, our phase of, we got the business up and running. We found the right business. It's up and running. And then phase 3, the final stage here, is going to be selling the business. How do we sell this business? So thanks for everyone for joining, and looking forward to for our final phase and selling our business. Take care.